Okay, you said 37?
Yes, chapter 37. We are on to Joseph's life now. Now remember, I have been presenting to you what Luther argued and what the early church fathers argued, along with the apostles, is that the entire Old Testament is about Christ. All right? So, which is not something commonly understood amongst greater Christendom. So oftentimes when you hear the TV preachers especially, they often preach about the Old Testament. The Old Testament. They almost are always preaching out of the Old Testament. The problem is that they see the Old Testament, and they're not entirely wrong in this way, but it's like the Old Testament is lessons on how to live a better life and not make the same mistakes that others did, right? Okay, there's an element of truth to that. But there's also a higher theology involved here, and that is the entire thing is prefiguring the coming of the Zerah, the seed, the offspring. Remember, we've been talking about him promised all the way in Genesis chapter 3 to Eve, that from her own flesh would come a Zerah, a seed, an offspring who would crush the head of the serpent, right? And of course, that would be Messiah. That would be the Savior. He would be both fully God and fully man, as we confess in the ecumenical creeds, the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Athanasian Creed, right? So that's who, of course, Jesus of Nazareth is, since today is the second day of Epiphany, January 7th, 2026. So here we're going to see the Epiphany of the Zerah in the person and life of Joseph. Joseph being a type or prefigurement of the second person of the Trinity in the flesh. We just got through Christmas. Christmas is all about incarnation. Incarnate, Latin, in the flesh. Who in the flesh? The Son of God, right? The second person, eternally begotten of the Father before all worlds, God of God, light of light, very God of very God, begotten, not made, of one being substance with the Father, right? And yet, what? He took on human flesh, incarnate. John chapter 1. He tabernacled among us. He pitched his tent, right? And today we're going to talk about another prefigurement of his outward flesh, being the robe of many colors here. All right. So when you're reading the Old Testament, it's essential that you think, okay, how is this prefiguring the coming of this Messiah, the Zerah, the seed, the offspring, Jesus of Nazareth, right? So when you look at Joseph or Jacob, or you look at the 12 brothers, Israel, right? Israel's sons, and you look at all the events that's happening, you ask yourself, where is Christ prefigured in all of this? So we're going to give you lots and lots of examples today. So as we're reading here, think about it. All right, so let's do a quick review. I think we did cover the first 11 verses. We did a very large overview, but I want to hit those again. Does someone want to read Genesis 37, 1 through 11, please?
Okay, go ahead.
You guys arm wrestle. Go.
Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojourning, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the son of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us?" Or are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and even the stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind.
All right, so let's start at the very end of that section, and then we'll work back to the beginning. All right, so why would Jacob keep these dreams in mind? Why would Jacob keep dreams in mind?
I think he knew that there was something his son was telling him.
Well, yes, there's that, but did Jacob himself also receive revelation or dreams, right? Remember Jacob's ladder, right? So these are not things that happen to just the average, we all dream, right? But there's something to be said of the prophetic dreams as greater dreams because they're given by God, right? So Jacob doesn't understand the dream. The Lord hasn't given him the interpretation of the dream, although Jacob is used to having the interpretation of the dream, direct revelation as we would call it. But here now, he keeps it in mind because the same thing has happened to him, although he doesn't understand the interpretation yet. How do these things come to pass, or as Luke would later write, in the fullness of time, right? Yes?
Well, it's kind of interesting that now he's keeping it in mind, but he rebuked him in the start.
Yes, because it would be extremely untoward in the ancient world for a son to attempt in any way to usurp his father as patriarch of the household. That would be a big, big no-no. Nowadays we're so... how do I say
You don't
this?
respect anything.
Yeah, that's true. I was trying to come up with a more delicate way of saying it, but you just said it outright. Our culture's rotten in many respects. Since you started it all, we're rotten in many respects. We allow sons and daughters to act disrespectfully towards their parents, right? Which, by the way, is warned about in the law, right? The Old Testament law. Honor your father and your mother that it may go well with you, right? Because if you don't, it will not go well with you. And the Lord goes on and says, you want to live long in the land, you want to prosper, then honor your father and your mother. And there's something about that first commandment in the second table of the law, the fourth commandment, that if you disrespect the authority that is put over you, even if you think every kid thinks they're smarter, wiser than
Well, of course we are. We went to school.
than their parent, right? And it's a teenage rebellion thing, but oftentimes it starts even younger, right? But there's also this idea that if you're disrespectful towards your parents, you're going to be disrespectful towards God, which is a first commandment issue, right? So here we have, he rebukes him, and rightly so, but it's God who gave the dream, right? Now, Jacob thinks there's something going on here, as you were saying. He doesn't know exactly what's going on, but he's going to keep it in mind, but he still does the role of the patriarch, which is to rebuke his son, because it's obvious that, the whole family is bowing down to Joseph here, right? So let's go back to the beginning of it. Let's look at some Christology here, right? So now, I guess interpreting it allegorically in verse number 2, why does Moses mention 17 years old? Well, you could, as an older person, you could look at a younger person and say, well, they're too young, they don't know anything, which is often quite true. Matter of fact, maybe most of the time it's quite true, right? And here the Lord is showing that almost like later on St. Paul would write to Timothy in the pastoral epistles, that don't let people despise you because of your youth, right? So Joseph has been given an office that he doesn't quite understand yet, nor do the sun and the moon, the Jacob and Rachel, who is the firstborn son of the favorite wife, right? Joseph and Rachel, the sun and the moon, and all the brothers, the stars and the sheaves will all bow down to him, right? So there's an office that's going to be carried out here, even an office of salvation, which prefigures Christ, which they all yet do not understand. Because although Jacob is the sun and Rachel is the moon, and the brothers are older and greater in the line of succession, right? Like British monarchy, heirs and spares, right? Joseph is not to be despised because the Lord has chosen him as the vessel or vehicle for this coming salvation, which we're going to read about later on. Yes?
Well, it didn't seem like Joseph was lording it over them. He's just telling the dream.
Yes, and they despise it for it, right? But they also despise that there's more going on here than just the dreams, because they also know he's the favorite son, right?
Because he
And
got that coat.
allegorically, you could also interpret it too that fathers ought to be careful in showing partiality to one child over the other, because it can breed envy, resentment, jealousy, spite, and that can even turn into violence, right? As it does in this case, right? So there's an allegorical interpretation as well. If we're going to, like so many people, draw lessons from the Old Testament, which we should, right? But the Christology here is also setting up that Joseph is a type of Christ who is to come, right? So think about it Christologically speaking, right? The father has a favorite son, right? So in this way, Israel and or Jacob is a type of the father, right? Joseph is a type of the son, right? Now Israel loves Joseph more than the other sons, right? Well, they hate him for this, right? Jesus is hated in his own generation. Yes, go ahead.
Hasn't Rachel passed away by now?
Yeah, she passed away.
Okay, in chapter 35, but
Yeah,
I was just wondering
35.
if this was out of order. Okay.
No,
Okay.
right?
Because you mentioned something about the sun and the moon. And
Yes, well, I'm getting to that, because
Okay.
this is a prefigurement of the resurrection, too, and the book of Revelation, right? We'll get to that here in a moment, right? So there's this whole mention of his age, the robe of many colors. What does that mean? We're going to get to that here in a moment. Don't let me forget. And yet, for now, though, we're dealing with the fact that there's envy and hatred, and that's manifesting in how they even speak to him, right? So in Christ's own day, which would be at this point roughly 15 centuries later, they couldn't speak peaceably to Jesus either, right? They hate him because he has powers, right? Joseph has this special power, this special office given by the Father. Jesus has a special power, special office given by the Father, and he's hated for it, right? So you have the dream. We know what the interpretation of the dream. You have the sheaves, which are the brothers. They bow down. They hate him even more for it, right? Well, they're hating him because he's a despised youth. He's the latecomer. They're also half-brothers, which is also another, if we're going to draw lessons, don't have multiple wives and have children with multiple wives, because that can also cause issues down the right? Which you do see that, right? Because Jesus even warns his generation that even though they bring up Moses, well, Moses allowed us to do that. And he said, only because of the hardness of your hearts, right? It's not right, because in the beginning God made them male and female. He made them Adam and Eve, and there's supposed to be one man, one woman till death parts them. But what does the devil do? The devil comes in, he tries to divide Eve from Adam, Adam from Eve. And of course, then you try to divide families and brothers. And what do we see in the world today? Chaos, right? Division, envy, spite, rage, backstabbing, a lack of being able to speak peacefully to one another. All of this is, of course, sin and the devil's work, right? And then you have the next dream, of course, which Jacob rightly picks up on, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars all bowing down to him. Whoa, wait a second. It was one thing when it was just your brothers bowing down, but now he rightly understands. Now you have a dream where I, your father, and I am greater than you. Now I am bowing down to you as well. And he rebukes him for it, right? Okay. So here we see the jealousy. They're not able to speak well to him. And yet, in the future, we know that when all of these things come to pass in the fullness of time, which is how the dream plays itself out, because the Lord is able to give dreams and predict the future and all these things, indeed they will bow down to him, right? As Lord, even though he is less than them by order of birth. God does everything upside down. How does the older serve the younger? Well, Jacob should know something about that too, because he's not the firstborn, he's the secondborn, right? So God is flipping the script on humanity. Humanity says, it's only supposed to happen the way we see it. And God's like, really? And he does it totally different, right? And he doesn't do things the way we expect him to do it, right? In this way, this being the season of Epiphany now, taking this out Christologically a little bit further, we know even from the book of Revelation and from the Epiphany passages in Matthew chapter 2 with the coming of the wise men, the nations come and they bow down to him. Mary and Joseph bow down to him, the sun and the moon, right? In the book of Revelation, as we've been studying on Sunday mornings, we see the nations coming and bowing down before him. He's Son of God, Son of Man, that is Son of Adam. That's what the word man means in Hebrew, is Adam, right? And yet he's also called Son of the Most High, right? What was the message of Gabriel to Mary, who's the new Eve, right? He will be called Son of David, Son of Adam, Son of the Most High, El Elyon, which is a name from Hebrew that we received earlier in the interaction of Abraham with this pre-incarnate, pre-infleshed person of Yahweh, who is the I Am, God, right? So all of this is Christology. God is, even through Moses, 15 centuries before the birth of his son, pointing his holy people through imagery, a cloaked, if you will, or hidden message of how he's going to do all these things, right? But of course, it takes the Lord to open the mind, to open the heart, to see these things and go, aha, now I clearly see, right? I'm reminded of somebody I knew years ago who told me a story when we were talking about glasses, and he said when he was a child, everything was a blur, but he didn't realize that he thought that's the way vision was, and he was failing in elementary school and kindergarten, and one of the teachers said, and this was back in the 50s, right? One of the teachers said, little Johnny, do you need glasses? And he's like, what's that? Because he can't even see. He's got like he's got everything, astigmatism, nearsighted, he's probably got the worst of everything, right? And so the teacher told the parents, and the parents took little Johnny to the eye doctor, and they gave him some glasses, and lo and behold, voila, now you can see. And he said the biggest thing that blew him away was not just the clarity of seeing things clearly for the first time, but when he walked outside, the wind was blowing through the trees, and he looked up and he saw leaves. Everything before was just like a green smear of mess, and he saw the individual. He said he was blown away by the leaves. And that's when the Holy Spirit comes to us, right? And he puts on those spiritual glasses, and now we can see 2020. Suddenly, you look at passages like this, and you look at other passages, Old and New Testament, and you realize, oh my gosh, the Lord has been laying all these things out, been planning all these things. No matter what the devil does, no matter what mankind does, the Lord is constantly working around these schemes, if you will, of the devil and men, and he's making his will come to pass, which is the salvation of sinners, right? So now let's go on to the unfortunate, speaking of sin, and working around these things. Someone want to read verses 12 through 17?
I have a question first.
Yes, go.
You want to talk about the coat?
Yeah, well, I'm going to get to that
Okay.
specifically. Yep, that's coming up. When they strip him and they pour blood all over it.
Oh,
we're gonna
okay.
get to it then.
I was ahead of something.
Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are you your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem's? Come, I will send you to them." And he said to him, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he went with him. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he said to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields, and the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock?" And the man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'"
Dothan, yeah.
So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan.
Very good. All right. So here now, think Christologically again. You've got a father, a son, and then the father is sending the son, and it's almost like Isaiah chapter 6, right, where he says, "Here am I, send me," right? Who will go? Who will share the gospel? "Here am I, send me." Isaiah chapter 6, right? "But I'm a man of unclean lips amongst a people who dwells with unclean lips," right?
But
Isaiah
who
6.
is Israel?
That's Jacob.
That's Jacob. Yeah,
Okay.
remember he received the name because he struggled
That's right.
or wrestled with both God and men and have prevailed.
They
right?
go
So-
back and forth calling them
Yes.
by their old and
Yeah.
their new, and it gets confusing.
Yeah.
I
So,
think.
yep.
Yeah.
It's the two names, right?
So you don't mind if we ask questions?
That's why we're here.
Okay, good.
All right. Very good. All right. So the Father is now sending the Son. Christologically, the Father sends the Son into the cosmos, into the creation. John chapter 1, right? "Here am I, send me. Go now and see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock," right? Remember, Christologically, the church is the flock, right? The shepherds, right? Jesus is the shepherd of your soul. The pastors, the apostles and the priests, the pastors, they are under shepherds, right? 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, the pastoral epistles, when he's writing to Timothy to appoint in each town, each church in each town, overseers, that is pastors, elders, right? It's a biblical synonym for the pastoral office, right? So go now and see it's well with them, well with the flock, right? And send me word, right? And now he goes and he's wandering in the fields looking for his brothers. They're looking for greater Israel, the 11 brothers, right? And he runs into somebody, right? And this person, of course, is kind of prefiguring John the Baptist, right? Who, see how that's going on there, right? And what are you seeking? I'm seeking my brothers. And where are they? Oh, well, they're over here. They've moved on. They've strayed from where they're supposed to be. Israel strays. The flock strays. Sinners stray, right? All the Christology going on here. So the sons of Israel have gone astray. This is not unlike Christmas and Epiphany, right? You have the incarnation of the Son. The Father doesn't spare his own Son. He sends his Son into the world, into the pastures, from the valley of Hebron, into Shechem, to Dothan, and on to... Yes.
May I ask, why did they not take their brother with them when they left?
Well, remember, they don't like him, so they don't want to hang out with him. So...
But yet the father sent him.
Right. Well, you're also going to see later on, too, that Jacob is not entirely unaware of the venomous situation between his favorite son and what later would become his next favorite son, Benjamin. That's a different story for later on. and the older brothers, right? And he's also aware that his own sin has been part and parcel to this tension as well, and that you have all of these half brothers that aren't full brothers, because even amongst full brothers in the scripture, like Cain and Abel, as we're going to talk about here in a minute, there still can be tension, right? Unfortunately.
You think that's why he mentions earlier that he's only 17? He's really not old enough to be out wandering around by himself, maybe. I don't remember when Jacob...
Were you allowed to wander around when you were 7? Yes, you were.
Yes.
Not in the wilderness.
Oh, we did, man.
I
Gen
bet
X
they
was
did.
all over the...
I
Man, we
bet
were
they-
miles from home. Miles on bicycles, on foot, all kinds of... But yeah, this would be a bit extreme. I mean, it's a different society. I mean, he was probably 20, 30 miles from home,
I was going to ask that. Do we know how far away these?
Oh, it would be miles and miles and miles from
So it actually
from
took him
Hebron
a
to...
day or more.
Oh, he would have been gone for days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
But this was not uncommon in that
And they
culture
didn't have
too.
cell phones to really call back home. to
No,
say-
there was no cricket cell
Communication,
phone. There was
nothing.
no.
No, my parents would never. I was.
You were a favorite child that stayed.
No,
at
I
home.
was not.
All right. Well, typically they didn't allow the daughters to go days from home, but the sons would. I mean, you got to remember this is a nomadic society. They're herdsmen who are looking in a climate that's very similar to Southern California, kind of almost like a high desert. And they're having to move their herds wherever they can find fodder or pasture. So they're constantly moving, right?
So nobody really owned the land back then?
There would be various sections of land that would be owned by certain people. However, there would be like public lands as well. And a lot of times they were up in the hills, which would be like public lands, because the good stuff down below in the fertile plains, that's where your vineyards and your farmland would be, and you wouldn't allow the sheep to go running through people's vineyards and picking
Okay.
off all because the sheep, if you know anything about sheep, they eat it down to the very they're worse than lawnmowers. They actually pull up the roots and like destroy their so even today, like that's how herdsmen, you can own some land out west, Wyoming, Montana, but you also have public lands, and you basically pay grazing fees, and your cattle and or sheep will often go into the high country, and that's why the cowboys will go along, because there's grizzly bear and wolves and everything else. And if you're partial to these modern shows like Yellowstone and stuff, it's like, why are the cowboys going along? Well, because grizzly bears are very hungry animals, and the cowboys are there to protect the. So it's the West, the Wild West, if you will, is not unlike, in some respects, what it would have been like in the ancient world. So they would have been up in the high country, up in the rocks, looking for fodder wherever they could find it. And that's probably why they wandered from Shechem to Dothan, is because they kind of pastured out that area and they had to move the flocks on, right? But of course, like you said, there's no cell phone, so they can't, there's no CB radio like Dukes of Hazzard,
No.
shepherd to lost sheep, shepherd to lost sheep, This is
They didn't have
Crazy
SO
Cooter coming
they-
at you.
No
Breaker,
SOS.
yeah. Smokey and the Bandit, no, that's not going on, right? All right, so we've got this idea that the Father is sending the Son, right? Okay, let's do verses 18 through 28. We'll wrap up with that section.
They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes the dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of the hand, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit, The pit was empty, there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan and Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt.
Nice guys, huh? All right. Very
Now,
good. Good brothers. All
who
right.
made his coat?
Well, the scripture doesn't say, it just says his father gave him. Now remember, this household is very large, right? There's multiple tents, multiple family groups within it. There's servants, there's lifelong servants that are also part of the household as well. So I think later on we're going to see that when Israel goes down to Egypt, once Joseph is fully installed as second in command of Pharaoh's entire household, the entire nation, is that about 70 some peoples make the journey from the land to, they descend down the hill country. When they say descend, it isn't like we say, well, I descend, I'm going south for the winter or whatever. No, it's from topographically speaking, from high country to low country. Egypt is kind of mostly at sea level, right? Especially around the Nile, the fertile Nile regions and near the Mediterranean coast. Whereas Hebron and Salem, at this point it's called Salem, later it's going to be renamed Jerusalem, is actually several thousand feet above sea level, right? And so they actually are descending down. So when they come out of the high country and they go down to Egypt, they're descending, right? And so here we have the brothers, now the hatred's so they're out in the wild, and the father is not around to police their activities. Now's the time. Carpe diem, seize the day, right? In Latin, right? So they're going to conspire to murder their own brother, right? This is typology again. It's prefigurement of that which is to come in the fullness of time, right? We're reminded of an earlier episode where Cain and Abel, right? Remember, I've even preached about, and it's not just me that's done this, Luther preached about like this, the early church fathers, the apostles, where Abel, Jesus is a better Abel. In Abel, you have a prefigurement of the brother rising up to spill the other brother's blood into the ground, right? And he says, "Where is your brother? Am I my brother's keeper?" Which shows you how bad spiritually a place Cain is in, right? In terms of unrepentance. He knows he's murdered his brother, spilled his blood into the ground. Yahweh